Good evening, everybody. This is Stephen Howson. This is Full-Time Devils. United have managed to get 3 points on the road away at Watford, which I got to be honest with you, I didn't actually expect that tonight, to be honest. And you'll have to forgive me, I've been a bit sick over the last 24 hours, so I haven't got much of a voice. These next 3 games that we had, Watford, Arsenal and City, I thought there's no way that we could take all 3 points out of every single game that we had. I definitely didn't think that was going to be the case. And I thought Watford was going to be one of the trickier ones. But the way we blew them away with those 3 goals in the space of about 15 minutes in the first half was clinical. Fair play to Ashley Young. There was absolutely brilliant finishes. Marshall's finish was delightful. Possibly the best of the 3 was Jesse Lingard's. I don't know what they was doing. They just completely left him alone. At half-time, I flung a tweet out and said, the scoreline's sort of masking a little bit of what's going on in this game because we don't actually look like we're in that much of a control. They were still blasting through us. I don't like a 2-man midfield with the players that we've got at the moment. It doesn't feel as safe or as secure. It feels like we're missing somebody in there, and I definitely think against Arsenal and against City, United definitely have to switch it up to that 3-man midfield. Otherwise, we're really going to get caught out, especially against City. Maybe not so much against Arsenal. You might see him line up with a similar thing. I'm not sure what's happened with Herrera this season because our best performances last season was with Pogba, Herrera and Carrick in the midfield. And I don't know if it's the fuss over his contract. I'm not sure what it is in the slightest, but he's not been up to scratch by any stretch of the imagination at all. He's not been up to scratch anywhere near the level of what he was in the previous season. And when he's played in a 2-man midfield here, like he was tonight with Paul Pogba, there's just no protection from the defence. In my head, Matic coming in for Carrick and then stick with the same midfield 3, Herrera, Pogba, was like a big upgrade on what we had last season. But it hasn't been that case in the slightest, and you can almost see why even Fellaini coming in is a massive boost for us and a massive option and something we can play in them sort of games. But it's just not been the case. We've had injuries at the same time to every single midfielder, which has really hampered us, I think. And it's difficult to see how United are going to progress in those bigger games. I do expect us to go to Arsenal and try and get something. I think that's what all United fans want at the moment, is for us to go and try and step up in those bigger games. And then at home against City, you've got to feel like we're going to be there. But the press narrative at the moment is doing my nutting, man. I'm not sure what score Spurs ended up. It was 2-1 a couple of minutes ago. I don't know if it's finished up 2-1. I haven't seen it. If Spurs have lost another game on the road there, no one's talking about it with Pochettino. We're still second in the league. We're still well ahead of all of these other teams. And people are talking like United are in a crisis. Tonight we fielded a team that didn't have Carrick, that didn't have Fellaini, that didn't have Mkhitaryan, that didn't have Jones, that didn't have Bailly. We've got some serious depth to this. And we had Rashford and Ibra on the bench as well. We've got some serious depth. I'm not sure if it's the way that Mourinho's sort of been treating it or if it's the way that Mourinho's been sort of acting, that it doesn't quite feel, or if it's just that the press have just been piping off City to another level. But it just doesn't feel like all there, does it? Make no mistake though, 3 points at Vicarage Road. I mean, credit to Marco Silva because he's actually made them be difficult and he's made this actually be a fixture that matters. They've took big points from other sides around the league. And this was a difficult fixture for us to go to. But we've scored 4 goals again. I think that's the 8th time we've scored 4 goals so far this season. That's phenomenal. People talking about Mourinho parking the bus. People talking about United not scoring this, that and the other. 8 times we've scored 4 goals. I'm sure prior to this season it had been years before we'd even done that. That's incredible for me. What I have to say is tonight as well, I was really impressed with Lindelof. Now, when he came, and prior to him coming, we've been looking at him, and defensively he was suspect. He's clearly been putting work in on the training ground. Absolutely, clearly been putting work in on the training ground. Because he was, for me, he was man of the match tonight. I thought he was flawless in every single thing that he did. He stayed on his feet when he needed to. He went to ground when he needed to. He just executed every single thing that you would expect him to do. And he did it perfectly. So I was really impressed with Lindelof tonight. And I'm impressed with a lot of the performances that we play in a 3. I think the 3 suits us so much better. And I still think you can play a back 3 and a midfield 3. Because a 3-5-2 is still a midfield 3. And I think a 3-5-2, as we saw at the start of the season in pre-season, That's an option for United, and I think it's a legitimate option for United to try and use a midfield three alongside a back three, certainly in those games. But it didn't look like the most solid platform. It didn't look like the most well-drilled United. And as I said, half-time I was seeing the writing on the wall that they was coming through us, and because they hadn't scored and because we'd been super clinical, it felt like we was killing it, and it didn't really matter. I thought Jesse Lingard was... I thought actually a lot of the fringe players tonight really stepped up. 3 players that I didn't think stepped up and weren't great was Lukaku and Pogba and Matic. And maybe Pogba and Matic partly was one of the reasons why we saw Watford running through the middle a little bit. Lukaku had a couple of chances that he should have buried. I'm not worried about Lukaku. I think he's going to be fine. But I think that he's got to start putting away some of those goals. It wouldn't have made a difference to the scoreline if he had scored tonight, but I think it'd be nice for him to get a couple of goals. And if he gets a goal against City or Arsenal, then happy days. But I thought Matic was poor tonight, I thought Pogba was poor tonight, and I thought Lukaku was poor tonight. But everybody else had a decent game. Thought Young was clinical. I got no issues with Ashley Young, and I even said on the preview, which a lot of you are forgetting, that I understand the reasons why he's first choice. The issue that I had was people telling me he'd been brilliant when I didn't think he'd been brilliant. Or we have higher expectations of brilliant. Tonight he took both his chances and put in absolute top draw finishes for both of those. He has little defensive responsibilities when there's a defensive three behind him. I think he's a perfectly viable option there. But I just completely disagree with those people that are saying that up till now he'd been brilliant when, I prefer players that look after the ball a little bit more than what Ashley Young was doing. But tonight, no dramas whatsoever. Absolutely clinical. 2 banging finishes. Fair play to the guy. But yeah, Jesse Lingard I thought was great tonight. I thought constant threat. His movement was something that we've lacked in that final third for... It feels like a couple of weeks. 2-3 weeks at least, I would say. 2-3 weeks at least that we've lacked that movement in the final third. And Jesse Lingard offered that tonight. He was making chance after chance. His goal was absolutely ridiculously good. And he probably could have had that chip if he'd have put it on target as well a little bit earlier in the game. But, I'm not looking at the negatives here. I'm trying to look at the positives. We're still second in the league. We're keeping pressure up. Spurs fell apart after we beat them. And they've lost more games since we beat them. Is it possible that we can go and get a result at Old Trafford against Manchester City and we can start their wobble off as well? I think that's what we've got to look at. Yes, you've got to take it one game at a time. Yes, Arsenal are a massive threat to us that we've definitely got to deal with. But you can't help but have one eye on that City game. Because the permutations for what's going to happen in the Premier League if we lose that game are huge. If we don't beat Arsenal, which to be fair, you would take a draw at your biggest rivals on the road. That's a fact. So if we do end up with a draw and City pick up another win, then we're talking like 10 points going into that game, which means it's a 13-point potential gap if we lose to Manchester City at home. Conversely, if we go in there and it's still only 8 points and then we beat them, we peg it back down to 5. And then you're looking at them just drawing a couple of games, losing a couple of games, which is going to happen. You've just got to hope that we're in a position to do something about it when they inevitably drop points. And ideally, it's us that causes them to drop points, because then obviously, we have a massive swing on that. Let's see what some of you guys are saying in the comments. Get behind Lukaku. He didn't become a shit striker overnight. I don't know if that's aimed at me or not, but yeah, I think... I don't think he's been a shit striker. I think he's just got to finish some of the ones that he's having a go. No chance of beating City on current form, says Mark. How? How is there no chance of beating City on current form? Are you talking about our form or their form? Because actually they're leaking goals. Stoke wobbled them a little bit. Huddersfield wobbled them a little bit. So how are you saying that City are on this invincible kind of form? The way that they beat Huddersfield at the weekend was with a shit penalty and a deflection off somebody's chest. Are you honestly telling me that that's such a good football team that we can't overcome that? Come on, man. That's ridiculous talk. That's absolutely ridiculous talk. I definitely think that one of the ways that United can beat them is by attacking and using our pace on the counter-attack, and I think we can definitely do that, man. Pogba was not that bad at all today, says Vermond. It's your opinion, mate. I thought he was quite wasteful. I thought his positioning was a little bit all over the place. It certainly wasn't his best game I've ever seen him play. I'm a big Lukaku fan. He got 8 goals. Yeah, I mean he's only two goals off being leading scorer in the league. He's hardly playing shit, but there has been opportunities, and certainly today there was at least one opportunity that I thought he should have buried. Matic's first subpar game. Someone there, I missed the name, says City are beatable, but we can't sit back. I absolutely agree. I absolutely agree. Someone saying Pogba was brilliant tonight. I disagree, mate. No, I disagree. I thought he was pretty wasteful tonight. Lindelof was amazing, says Agvina. I'm not sure about amazing, but he was pretty flawless in what he did. It was basics, but it's nice to see him getting the basics right when we've seen him previously not getting those basics right. Rojo gave away a very silly pen. That's what you get with Marcus Rojo, isn't it? Unfortunately, it was the same thing that you got with Vidic. I'm not saying he's on the same level as him, but he's got that same sort of mentality. And I think that's something that you just got to have to deal with when you have got a player like Rojo. What do I think are the negatives from this game, says Josh. I think the negatives from this game was how easily our midfield was overrun. If we go all the way back to pre-season, I thought we played some excellent football in pre-season. And if you look at how the derby was won, we won it on the counter-attack with some excellent football. Marcus Rashford scoring a beautiful goal. And I think it was Herrera and Pogba that we played in a 4-2-3-1. But even then you could see that City was swarming around us and steaming forward. And it was only through a little bit of luck, I thought, that we managed to get the win against City in pre-season. I know you shouldn't read too much into pre-season, but some of the things that we're seeing in pre-season, we are still seeing in the regular season. So I think they're proper pertinent. And one of the main ones that I'm seeing is the fact that our midfield looks overrun when it's 4-2-3-1. I think that there's definitely room for improvement with a midfield three, and I'd love it to be Michael Carrick, to be honest. I think that could be an absolute belter. Michael Carrick back for the derby. He's probably going to need to play a game prior to that, so maybe we see him get some minutes against Arsenal. Maybe he plays an under-23 game. I don't know. Marshall looks good in the striker position. I thought tonight it was kind of like Jesse Lingard was in a bit of a number 10 central kind of role, and Marshall and Lukaku was almost like a partnership, wasn't they? I think a 4-2-3-1 with another midfielder, maybe sacrifice a number 10 like a Lingard or a Mata or a Mkhitaryan. Sacrifice one of those for an actual out-and-out central midfielder. And I think you've got half a chance against that side of City's. And even Arsenal, to be honest. Arsenal are steadily picking points up at the moment. We can't discount them and just think, oh, it's garbage. They're, it's Arsenal, they'll cave in. Because sometimes they don't. Sometimes they step it up against us. Remember a couple of years ago when he turned us over 3-0 at the Emirates? That we went there with a strong side. I think we had Schneiderlin and Schweinsteiger, and we was in pretty good form, and they just absolutely turned us over. So I don't want to go into the game thinking like that, but I also think we've got definitely ways that we can hurt them. Lukaku needs a break. See, I disagree on that because he was scoring on an international break. I think he'd be fine just playing through it. Who would I start against Arsenal? Up top was that. I still play Lukaku. The weaknesses that Arsenal have got are still the weaknesses that Arsenal have got, and that for the most part is about being physical. So I go with the physical side. Possibly bring Fellaini back in the mix and into that midfield three. Definitely keep Lukaku up top and try and bully him. And then we'll see what the crack is. Hopefully, maybe Carrick can play against CSK Moscow, get half a game, half an hour maybe, or something along those lines. Should we start the same team against Arsenal? I think if we start the same team against Arsenal, then we're gonna I think we're gonna see Arsenal probably capitalise a little bit better than what Watford did. Watford obviously have got good players. Arsenal have got better players. And I definitely think if you allow them the same sort of freedom, if you allow Ozil and Sanchez the same sort of freedom that we allowed Dini and Richarlison, I think we're going to get punished big time. We should stick to a 4-3-3 or a false 9, says Paul. I'm a big fan of the 4-3-3. I'm also a big fan of the 3 at the back in certain games as well. So I wouldn't mind seeing us experiment a little bit with a proper 3-man midfield with a 3 at the back and 2 up front. I think it's possible, especially the form Anthony Martial's in at the moment. Does he look like he's not going to score in any game whatsoever? And I think while Martial is in that kind of form, then Lukaku's able to do a little bit more work. Because, do you know what, maybe I'm being a little unfair on him. His finishing was crap. but some of his link-up play was actually very good. Some of the passes that he was laying in, I remember him laying in an unbelievable ball for Lingard. I think that Lukaku's still doing work. I can't remember who said it. Someone in the press said it. He's probably working too hard at the moment, thinking he needs to do this or he needs to do that. Someone said 3-5-2 doesn't work. Well, it evidently does work in certain circumstances. Depends who you're playing and the personnel you're using in it, doesn't it? So, I don't know. We've got options, haven't we, going into this game? Arsenal's a big game. We just need to deal with CSK in Moscow the best we can and then get out. And we've got a massive game. And still 3 big games ahead of us, isn't it? So there we go. Right, thank you guys for tuning in. McCullough's coming with all the fan cams very shortly. I'll see you in a bit.